In the last episode, we talked about how institutional reforms like anti-dynasty and party system laws can, in theory, help fix the incentives that produce corruption, but how difficult they are to pass and sustain. Today, I want to talk about another type of reform. It's one that, in my view, goes even deeper into the DNA of our political system: the electoral system itself. You see, the electoral system defines how votes are translated into power, who wins, who loses, and what kind of politicians the system rewards. And in the Philippines, that structure explains a lot about why corruption, clientelism, and weak parties persist. Of the more than 18,000 elected posts in the country, about 80% are chosen through the multi-member plurality system. Voters can tick several names and the top vote-getters win. Sounds fair and democratic, right? But the incentives it creates push politics toward personality, name recall, and money. When candidates from the same party compete against one another, and when winning depends on securing only a small share of the vote, politicians have no reason to campaign on ideas. Instead, they campaign on who they know and how much they can spend. Let's start with the Senate. Every voter can choose up to 12 candidates nationwide. The top 12 win. That means everyone, even those from the same party, competes against each other. Intra-party competition is built into the design. So instead of strengthening parties, this system fragments them. Candidates build personal machines, relying on family dynasties, celebrity status, or money. Almost 1/5 of all senatorial candidates since the 1990s have run as independents, which tells you just how little party affiliation matters. The same logic applies locally. City and municipal councils are also elected through multi-seat plurality. A town might have 8 councilors, and voters can pick up to 8 names. In practice, this produces the same fragmentation and intra-party rivalry. Candidates run against each other even within the same ticket, and coordination becomes impossible. It rewards retail vote buying and patronage, because that's how you mobilize fragmented support. This is the quiet engine of the clientelistic cycle we've been talking about, and it's written into the electoral rules themselves. Now, some reformers after 1987 tried to fix this imbalance. The framers of the Constitution introduced the party list system for the House of Representatives. It was supposed to give marginalized sectors, laborers, farmers, women, youth, a voice in Congress. The idea was simple. 20% of House seats would be filled through a proportional system. Voters would choose a party, not an individual. And to prevent domination, no party could win more than 3 seats. It was a clever compromise, a way to blend proportional and district representation. But in practice, it quickly fell apart. To win a seat, a party must secure at least 2% of the national vote. That means campaigns happen at the national level, much like the Senate race, where money, media exposure, and name recall dominate. Genuine grassroots groups rarely stand a chance. And because the law allows broad participation, many so-called party list groups are not really marginalized at all. They're often fronts for dynasties or traditional politicians who simply found a new way to expand their influence. Some nominees don't even belong to the sectors they claim to represent. By 2013, the Supreme Court had removed the requirement that party lists represent marginalized sectors altogether. And with that ruling, the reform lost its soul. I've written about this topic in a chapter of Electoral System Reform and Design, edited by Paul Hutchcroft. And what I found then, and still believe today, is that this is the one reform that could have truly changed the game. In theory, redesigning electoral rules can reshape political incentives more directly than almost any other reform. A mixed or proportional system could encourage parties to coordinate, strengthen representation, and reduce the dominance of money politics. But since the 1990s, this proposal has gone nowhere. It's not that people don't talk about it. Academics, reform advocates, and civil society groups have been discussing this for decades. There were conferences, policy briefs, even draft bills, but it never gained traction. Why? Because it's harder to sell. Anti-dynasty and party system reforms are easy to explain. Everyone understands why dynasties are bad or why weak parties hurt governance. Electoral system reform, on the other hand, is technical. It sounds abstract. Most people, including legislators, don't see how changing voting rules changes behavior, and so it stalls. So what would this reform actually look like? And how might it change political incentives in the long run? One promising option is to adopt a closed list proportional representation system, or closed list PR. Here's how it works. Instead of voting for individual candidates, voters cast their vote for a party. Each party presents a ranked list of candidates, and the number of seats it gets depends on its share of the vote. Those at the top of the list fill the seats. At first, this might sound too abstract, but think about what it does to incentives. Under the current system, every candidate has to build a personal vote, mobilizing their own networks, raising their own money, competing even against their supposed party mates. Closed list PR changes that logic. It forces candidates to coordinate within a party because their success now depends on the collective vote share of the group, not just their own. At the beginning, parties might still be built around personalities, family networks, or compadres. That's okay. The important thing is that they are now organizing collectively. They're learning to coordinate campaign strategies, messaging, and resource distribution, even if the motivation is still clientelistic. But once those coordination structures exist, they create space for something else. Over time, parties may discover that it's more efficient to build a shared platform. They begin to differentiate themselves not just by who they are, but by what they stand for. It's a slow process, maybe a decade or two, but that's how you move from a system of personalistic politics toward one that rewards collective, programmatic behavior. In other words, what this reform can do is jumpstart a virtuous cycle of political organization. At first, it's messy. Parties are fragile, ideologies are thin, and old habits persist. But the repeated process of coordinating under clear institutional rules, election after election, forces adaptation. Over time, a few parties learn that stability and coherence pay off. They attract resources, voters start recognizing their brands, and politicians start relying on party machinery instead of pure clientelism. That's exactly what happened in Japan and Thailand. Both countries used to have systems that rewarded individual patronage and local vote brokering. When Japan adopted a mixed electoral system in 1994, and Thailand followed suit a few years later, something changed. The reforms didn't eliminate clientelism overnight, but they shifted the center of gravity, away from personal machines and toward parties that could coordinate nationally. The same principle could apply in the Philippines. A closed-list proportional system doesn't guarantee reform, but it creates an incentive environment that rewards cooperation instead of fragmentation, coordination instead of individualism. And once that coordination habit takes root, even parties that started as loose alliances of dynasties or friends begin to act more like actual parties, because they have to survive. That's how real institutional change often begins. Not from purity, but from path dependence. Small, cumulative shifts that eventually build a more stable equilibrium. That's the tragedy. Among all the institutional reforms we've talked about, this is arguably the most promising and the most ignored. Changing the electoral system could be the first real step toward fixing the deeper incentives that produce corruption. But it's also the hardest to champion politically, and even if passed, it's not immune to capture. Just look at what happened with the party list system, a reform with noble intentions that was eventually hijacked by the very elites it sought to counter. Still, if we're serious about changing how Philippine politics works, this is where the conversation must begin. Not with personalities, but with rules, the very architecture of our democracy. In the next episode, we'll shift gears and talk about the human side of all this. Why, in a system like ours, it's so difficult for good people to even choose to run for office in the first place.